but we're moving from the world of streaming cinemas, movie stars, to the pulse of creativity. We're diving into the stories that are shaping the moment across art and culture. Now, the AMVCAs may have delivered unforgettable fashion moments this year. But beyond the glamour and social media debates, they also sparked something else. Serious legal and ethical conversations around ownership, attribution, AI-generated inspiration, and creative rights. From cancelled commissions to sketch disputes and viral mood boards, one thing has become very clear. Fashion and law are now deeply intertwined. Well, our guest today is helping shape that conversation. She is a fashion lawyer, policy professional, lecturer, and the founder of the Fashion Law Institute Africa. Through her work, she has supported emerging brands, advanced legal literacy within the industry, and helped bridge the gap between a business and the fashion business and the law. She joins us now to discuss the importance of fashion law protecting African creativity and the future of the industry. Please give a warm Arise 360 welcome to Bernice Asein. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you so much.
Well, I have to start from here. I saw that very powerful write-up, article, I don't even know what to call it, that basically went viral, because I guess there had been that conversation and people were looking for someone who could kind of like collectively put their thoughts out there. And I want to start with this, right? When we think about, just give me a second here. You've described fashion law as a growing necessity in Africa's creative economy, right? Do you think that the industry itself fully understands how exposed it is currently in a legal sense?
Well, I don't think that they fully understand the implication of, what the industry has, right? And I think that there's a lot of gaps in the foundation of the fashion industry, right? First and foremost, when you think about fashion, everybody wears clothes.
Yes.
So when you tell people that this is going to be exclusively someone's right, it becomes very difficult to comprehend, right? So we are battling with that. So the fashion industry, where it stands right now, is difficult to communicate. And we have, our educational system not helping with that. We don't even have a lot of conversation about the stage of the fashion industry. So that's one of the reasons why we even had that conversation or put up that post, because we also realized that there's a lot of conversation about the growing and emerging fashion industry. And we like that, but we've been hearing about the emerging fashion industry or African fashion industry for a long time.
Yeah.
It was now time for us to sit to say, why exactly have we not gotten to the point where we have arrived? And that's one of the reasons why we thought that, law is very important. They need to understand that they have to have policies to create an enabling environment where these businesses would grow. Yeah.
So one of the biggest conversations this year, and it was around the viral cathedral dress.
Yes.
I can never forget, that was Nana Akua-Addo, right?
Yeah,
one of the biggest conversations around this year revolved around AI-generated mood boards, right? Legally speaking, what happens when inspiration originates from an image technically owned by nobody? If two designers are working from the same viral AI-generated image, who, if anyone, owns the creative outcome?
So, according to law, right, the law does not recognize artificial intelligence that is generated. No copyright can be attributed to technology or AI, right? However, if someone makes a modification to that particular design, sort of like applies their own independent thought process or creative design thinking, they can enjoy copyright.
So that's like the prompt.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Yes, they can enjoy copyright. Now, in that particular case, when you look at it, right, when it was given to the Cambodian designer, you would see that she applied independent thought to make it different. Yeah, but, when you look at it originally, when it was generated by, the celebrity, you would see that itself might not exactly enjoy protection of the law.
So we know that, lots of things happened at this year's AMVCA. There were lots of trending moments. But one of the moments, not that I liked it, but it was quite tantalizing to see, was the stylist that got caught by the Big Brother housemates on the red carpet. So Is there any legal standing those girls could have had for him? Because he practically ran away with their money, right? And what's that? It's really audacity, right? To show up at the same event.
Yes, it's breach of contract, right? It's fraud. So obviously, I think that was not even an issue because they got him arrested, right? So really, I think that people need to have contracts in place. They need to do diligence on the people that they are working with so that they can hold them accountable when this come up.
I've never thought about signing a contract with a stylist, but these days, the way a lot of stylists can mess you up last minute.
They move in a steady way. Okay, I want to ask you this, right? This year has reignited conversations around missing stylist credits, reactive acknowledgements online. And this is more focused on, I believe, the dress that Tony Tones wore. The designer, Mr. Williams, Hayden Williams, I believe, came out and, put out his sketch, showing the sketch that he had done for Tiana Taylor, right? And said, this is quite similar. I wasn't credited until after it was called out. Should stylists, illustrators, tailors, creative collaborators have stronger legal protections around credits?
Yes, they should, because they are part of the value chain of the fashion industry.
Yeah.
The fashion industry is not focused only on designers. There are other people who also play to make that system work. So, I mean, even when you think about it legally, when someone comes up with an illustration, that in themselves is an original idea that is already fixed in a tangible medium. And by copyright law, they enjoy and they are the full owners of that particular thing. So they are entitled to get credit for their work or their contribution to that creative process. But we don't see that happening many times. And I think it's from a place of lack of knowledge, from the players in the industry.
Why is proper attribution still such a problem? Is it lack of knowledge? Is it ignorance? Is it I just don't care?
I genuinely think that it is lack of knowledge. People don't know. People don't know how important it is. And sometimes they would say, I think I saw a message where someone said, we reached out and we tried to, even in entertainment, right? When you want to sample people's song, once you've not gotten the authorization to do so, you have to leave it. You can't publish it. But with fashion, it almost seems like everything is available to use. So, and they don't think that there's any legal implication for that. But there is.
And I saw Hayden's post where he said that he got the credit and then the credit was taken down again. Very crazy situation. And even looking at the situation, who is fully at blame? Is it the designer? Is it the stylist? Is it the celebrity? Because really and truly, I feel sometimes celebrities don't even really know where the concept comes from. They are just put in an outfit and then all this commotion starts happening around them.
So I think that the burden falls on everybody to sort of check. For me, the celebrity has to confirm that everything is in place because
it's there. Copy this one.
Yes, hope you did not copy, because if you look at that particular process, you see that it was not only the stylist, there was somebody else who made the clothes, right? There was also somebody who wore it. So everybody has a duty of care to sort of ask who exactly owns this thing that we are replicating. But a lot of people don't raise those questions. I think really it's a lack of knowledge, is a lack of awareness on the severity of this matter.
I want you to speak on the line between inspiration, homage, referencing, and of course outright appropriation, because it seems as if that's where the lines are blurred. At what point do you now say, okay, this needs to be this needs to be legally binding? Inspiration, homage, referencing, and outright appropriation.
So in fashion, we believe that, there's nothing new, right?
Exactly.
But, yes, but the law already recognizes the very fact that once there's an independent effort made to modify a thing, that means you sort of see an idea or you see something and then you express it in your own way that nobody else would have thought about it. That can enjoy copyright or intellectual property protection. But people do not exactly understand, because sometimes people say they think about the same thing, but really and truly, they actually saw the same design. So it was difficult for them to sort of interpret it in their own way.
Right.
What we see really is for a design to be an inspiration is that you saw it and then you gave a different interpretation or expression to that design. But a lot of times people copy verbatim and say, oh yes, I saw it somewhere else. And it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. So you have to apply yourself. You have to have some level of creative thinking to it and then modify it for yours. We see this happen very much in academia. Before you use somebody's work, you have to reference, you have to document, you have to make and put it in your own language. The same with fashion. You have to also interpret and have your own independent expression.
Now, one of the most viral moments from the whole MVCAs was Queen Mercy Antang with her bread dress, you know, how she was marketing her bakery business, right? But it kind of drew people in two minds online. As much as it was creative and fashionable, people couldn't help but look at the times we are living in and how cost of living is becoming more and more difficult. So when it comes to fashion, do designers have to have like a social, like, be more present about what is happening in our country or in our ecosystem?
Yes, they have to be. So we have fashion law, right? And fashion law is basically the rules that concerns the fashion industry. But there's also fashion ethics, right? It is not exactly illegal, but you have to sort of like mind the community that you are. You have to look at the cultural sensitivity of a matter. You have to look at it properly to see how people would perceive it. So you have a duty of care as a designer to look at that atmosphere, because it might not exactly be illegal, but then it can lead to cancellation of your brand. Many designers internationally have suffered from this. There are many times when they release a campaign and people are like, oh no, you did not exactly pay attention to XYZ. And then they're like, you know what, you have to take that down. And many times you see that the brands will release statements, take down the campaign and things like that. That is supposed to also happen. Now, the truth about it is that I feel that they also owe it to the viewers or the, like, you know, to sort of have disclosures. If it was a fake bread, if it was something, you tell us, not that you paint it like it is a real thing. And when people are sort of like agitated, you deflect and be like, oh, you don't understand why. Because I think that it was a deliberate act, really. But again, it might not exactly be obviously something that you put on a scale of being, you know, legality, but then you have to look at it from a place of ethics. Really.
Okay, let's just kind of switch from the AMVCAs a bit, just to kind of go more into what you do. You wrote the first comprehensive text on fashion law, not just in Nigeria, but in Africa. First off, why did you even go in that direction in the first place? Because before I met you, I had been messaging like, I'm looking for a fashion lawyer. My friend was like, I don't think there's anything like a fashion lawyer. And then I found it and I was like, there is. Why did you decide to go into that? And what legal issues do you think that African fashion creatives are still dangerously underestimating?
Okay, so I started as a fashion designer in the fashion industry, you know, but however, I got to study law, and then it was a thing of, you know, which will I focus on, and then I stumbled on fashion law. And because I had the experiences and the problems of, like, you know, knowing what was the issues in the fashion industry, I was just, you know what, I could just apply law to this thing. And then I was attending a lot of industry events, and there were a lot of conversation around the very fact that the fashion industry in Africa can be design-led, in that there are other skill sets that is important to exist for the industry to move forward. And that's one of the reasons why I moved from fashion law to fashion policy, because we need institutions, we need other people to bring their perspective to push the African fashion market forward, because there are a lot of things. Now, fashion is not only a creative industry. It is also part of trade. It is also part of, you know, education. You know, it's a vocational skill that people learn. So it is cutting across various aspects. It's also cultural, right? So when you think about it, there's a lot of issues that surround the fashion industry that we don't pay attention to. People just focus solely on design. On the design. But there are other issues that come up. And that's one of the reasons that we have a stunted growth. Because if you look at it, the fashion industry is very fragmented. There are a lot of issues. You don't know who is the designer. There's a difference between the designer that we have on Lagos Fashion Week and the designer that we even have on the red carpet. They're quite different. Why is that so? Why does that exist? You think about even the educational system for fashion. Who exactly determines the standard of education for the fashion designers? Because when you look at all of this issue, you realize that it is a lack of education deeply. Because when you think about it, why would a designer just wake up in the morning and think about 37 chickens and then say, oh, you think that they don't understand fully the ethics of the industry? And that's one of the things we are obviously trying to do, right? Create that awareness that fashion focuses on various aspects, and we can't only focus on just designers alone. Other aspect has to grow with it. The legal aspect has to grow with it. The policy aspect has to grow with it. We also see that the industry now is being underestimated because there's no protection that is afforded designers. Many designers, you know, are suffering from IP protection, IP, you know, counterfeiting rather, right? When you look at it, we are not only suffering from counterfeiting from, you know, just fellow designers. We're seeing that China, you see the Chinese brands are, you know, duplicating things that our these things that are like peculiar to brands, and they are suffering. But somehow people do not see the circular effect of these things. The very fact that fashion brands cannot afford to pay standard salary, it's because they are not making so much money to make that payment. So the industry is not growing because there's a ripple effect that we see that the designers are suffering from. They lack institutional support. They don't have good access to financing. They don't have proper IP protection that guarantees that they get their money back. So it's a lot of issues that affects the fashion industry, and that's what really I'm passionate about. And that's
I can see that. And you have your work cut out for you. You really do. But this is a good start. They're cool.
Yeah, I know. Like intellectual property theft is never a good thing. But like ultimately, would you say conversations like this maybe hurt the industry, or is it good so we're having more conversations about ethics and about who owns what?
I think we should have a lot of conversation about intellectual property, about the business of fashion. I think it's very, very important. But more than just the conversation, we need to start asking the relevant question: who is in charge? Who is making the laws that concerns the fashion industry? Why exactly are there no laws that favors the fashion? Because if you look at it, for example, there was people would classify the fashion industry as part of the creative economy, which of course is really part of it. But there was a report that was released by the Ministry of Art and Culture on the mapping of the creative economy, and fashion was only mentioned 8 times in a 182-pager document, right? But fashion is more important than that, right? So a lot of people do not understand what the industry is suffering. So we need a lot of people to understand that you can't just play in the design part. You have to also be part of the policy. We have to be agitated. We have to, make the government know that we are suffering. We need protection. We need people at our borders, right? We need protection of our African fabrics, right? So, and we also need orientation, because what we even call African fabrics are not African fabrics. What we know to be African wears are not exactly African wears. So there's a lot of gaps in the system that we need people to come together to have conversations about. We need a policy document. We need something that really guides the future of African fashion.
Yeah, because it almost looks as if we're just going without a certain direction. And something just piqued my mind before my next question, talking about, intellectually owning certain fabrics. I remember reading, I think maybe a year or two ago, that Ghana had done some kind of IP protection over kente fabrics. Is that something that we should be looking more into?
Yes, it is something that we should look into. It's a geographical indication, law. We also have a bill currently, but again, when you look at the bill, you're like, who are the fashion players pushing for our indigenous fabric to be there? Because currently we have Chinese people duplicating and creating counterfeit of our products. So we need more awareness around these laws that are being created under whatever. The protection would really help, to sort of like show that the fashion industry has recognized certain fabric and textile as part of our culture. We know these things, but the law would also help with sort of putting in policies that sort of help counterfeiting to be, combated for the fashion industry.
Now, I kind of feel like social media has basically put a very huge telescope on these types of issues. People are becoming more aware, because if the AMVCA hadn't gone so viral, a Hayden Williams or Hayden, the guy that designed dress, we would never had even been like, isn't that my design? So do you think fashion has become more about visibility and virality, or more about the actual designs and like the craftsmanship?
Authenticity.
To be honest, I actually think so. I think that we have virality covering. They're not seeing us in the industry. We just see that there's a lot of noise. And you remember that I said that there's a lot of conversation around the very fact that African fashion is taking center stage, so we're seeing that, and that is a good thing for what it is. But then it is also overshadowing the issues that we have. So a lot of people make presumption and assumption about the, Nigerian fashion market, and just make it feel like all designers are making money from all of these things that is happening. But really, it is not true. We've seen many times designers come to talk about these things that really they can't even sell to Nigerians. I represent a lot of brands, and I can tell you for a fact that you see that their customer base doesn't even exist in the country. It's outside, right? So that's a conversation that needs to be had.
Also saying that they're pricing Nigerians out of their items.
I mean, you can't really blame them, like I said, because people are not seeing how it is a vicious cycle. Like, we are trying to make ends meet. It's difficult we are trying to also pay salaries. We're trying to do XYZ, right? You see people saying, oh, I'm a social media manager. I can't take, less than a certain amount. I mean, if a fashion designer is going to employ you, they have to pay that.
Yeah.
And who's going to pay? The customers, the consumers really have to bear the brunt of that. So I personally would not think that that's the fault of anyone. We just need to create an enabling environment where they can produce and we can be able to afford those things.
Thank you so much, Bernice. I'm going to close with this question. What, if there was one thing every designer, stylist, influencer, or creative director watching this should immediately start doing differently, what would it be?
It would start having contracts for everything and protecting your intellectual property aggressively. Because I mean, the Nigerian fashion market is getting the visibility that it is. A lot of people are paying attention now. So you have to start protecting what belongs to you, because that's one of the biggest issues that they are actually facing in the industry.
Wow, such a brilliant conversation. I've learned a lot. Nicole, I'm going to send you a contract for the next time I sip your water. Thank you so much, Bernice. Now it's time, of course, to say goodbye from all of us here in Lagos. We have come to the end of Arise 360 today. I am Sheyiton Atigarin.
And I'm Nicole Bebe. Remember to catch us every weekday right here at 5 p.m. on Arise News Channel. Until tomorrow, this has been Arise 360. Thank you for watching.